Over the last 10 years, something pretty wild has been happening in India's economy. And it's not just about growth. It's like a complete rewiring from the ground up, all fueled by a brand new generation of innovators. So let's dig in and see what this revolution actually looks like.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock to 2016. You see, that was the year the Indian government kicked off its Startup India initiative. Back then, you were looking at about 500 recognized startups. A respectable number, sure, but that was just the opening act.
Now, fast forward to today. That number hasn't just grown, it has absolutely exploded. I mean, get this. We're now talking about over 200,000 recognized startups. That is a 400-fold jump. This isn't just growth, we're in a different stratosphere altogether. Okay, a startup revolution. Those are big words, right? So let's break it down and actually quantify what this explosive growth looks like by the numbers. So check this out. The change isn't just about the sheer number of companies. Back in 2016, you could count the number of unicorns, startups worth over $1 billion, on maybe 2 hands, fewer than 10. Today, over 125. And here's the kicker, the part that really matters. These companies have created over 1.7 million direct jobs. So we're talking about massive value and real-world opportunity. Yeah, that number, 125 plus unicorns. Let's just let that sink in for a second. These aren't just little side hustles. We're talking about major league companies playing on the world stage. And that job number, 1.72 million. This is really where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? An abstract government policy has turned into a real, tangible paycheck for millions of families. That's a huge deal. So you add all of this up, and what do you get? Well, you get this. India is now the world's 3rd largest startup ecosystem, period. From a relatively small player just a decade ago to a top 3 global hub. The new innovators. Yeah, because this story is so much more than just numbers on a chart. It's really about who is driving this change, and just as importantly, where they're coming from.
You know, this quote from Prime Minister Modi really hits the nail on the head. The focus has shifted. You've got this incredible energy from young people who aren't just trying to build another app. They're trying to solve actual real-world problems. And this is the key part, it's not just a big city thing anymore. And this chart, wow, this chart tells a huge story. For the very first time, more than half, 51%, of new startups are coming from outside the big metro areas. We're talking about Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. Just think about that. Thanks to better internet and a growing local talent pool, places like Jaipur, Vadodara, and Haridwar are becoming innovation hotspots, tackling local challenges that matter. And it's not just about geography changing, it's about who's in the driver's seat. Almost half, 45% of all startups now have at least one woman director. So this isn't just about making money, it's about building an ecosystem that's way more inclusive and diverse than ever before. All right, so fueled by artificial intelligence. If the last decade was all about laying the foundation, the next wave, well, it's being powered by a whole new engine. And that engine is, you guessed it, AI.
And we're not talking about AI as some far-off sci-fi concept. We've moved past that. The real buzz is around what's called applied AI. So what does that mean? It just means using AI to solve very specific, very real problems. Like an app that helps a farmer spot crop disease from a photo, or a tool that lets a small shop automate its customer support. It's about taking this powerful tech and plugging it right into the real world. And believe me, the rest of the world has noticed. This is not just a local Indian trend. Look at a company like Anthropic, one of the biggest names in AI globally. They're not just dipping their toes in the water, they're diving in. They've hired a top exec to lead their India team, they're setting up shop in Bengaluru, and their CEO flat out said that India is going to be central to how AI develops for the whole planet. And why? Because India is already their number 2 market. The demand is already here. Okay, India's economic metamorphosis. So let's zoom out for a second. We've got startups, we've got jobs, we've got this AI explosion. What does it all mean for the Indian economy as a whole? Well, the view from the outside is pretty darn good. You have the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, basically saying India is a key growth engine for the entire global economy. They're not just being polite, they're actually talking about upgrading India's growth forecast because its performance is just so strong and so resilient. And here it is, maybe the most important point of this whole explainer. What's happening isn't just an economic upswing. Analysts are calling it a structural metamorphosis. That's a fancy way of saying the very DNA of India's economy is changing. It's shifting from an economy led by services to a new model that's driven by deep tech and homegrown innovation. That is a fundamental, game-changing shift. All right, so what happens next? A decade of this initiative has totally redrawn the economic map. But all this success, all this growth, it naturally leads to some pretty big questions about the future. The question really is this. Now that you have this incredible scale, how does India's ecosystem keep the pedal to the metal? How do you sustain this momentum while dealing with all the messy stuff, global competition, new regulations, and of course, the constant pressure to actually be profitable in the long run? The foundation is there, no doubt, but the next chapter is all about navigating those challenges. And on that note, that's our look at India's incredible startup transformation. Hey, if you found this useful and learned something new, it would mean a lot if you'd like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us keep making more deep dives like this one. And we really want to hear from you. What do you think is the biggest challenge, or maybe the biggest opportunity, for India's startups over the next 10 years? Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Thanks for tuning in.